announcements before we start. So there's no fire alarm planned for this evening. Should the alarm sound, please leave via the nearest available emergency exit. Two of the closest exits are through the glass doors behind you, over that way, okay. And to my left, and through the double doors onto the riverside. And that's those ones there under the clock. And please do meet at Café des Amis if we're called outside. Please note the upstairs toilets are out of use, so please don't go upstairs. There's a public toilet on the ground floor, the easy access toilet, the disabled person's toilet there as well. So that's for us to use today. Sorry about that. Members of the public are welcome to make their own recording of the meeting using whatever non-disruptive method they think is suitable. This meeting is being minuted, recording and audio live screened via the council's website. The Westgate Gardens gates on the riverside are locked at sunset, so members of the public must leave the Guildhall by the side exit behind the glass doors. So welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet. The Cabinet is part of the council responsible for most day-to-day decisions. It's made up of the leader, who is elected by the council, that's myself, Alan Baldock. The other Cabinet members are Councillor Dixie, Deputy Leader, and Cabinet Member for Property, Performance and Oversight. Councillor Soul, Cabinet Member for Finance. Councillor Hazelton, Cabinet Member for Housing. Councillor Dawkins, Cabinet Member for Climate Change and Biodiversity. And Councillor Charlotte Cornell, Cabinet Member for Heritage, Open Space, Waste and Recycling. Councillor Chris Cornell is Cabinet Member for the Coastal Towns. Councillor Ricketts is Cabinet Member for Tourism, Movement and Rural Development, and Councillor Nolan for Community, Culture, Safety and Engagement. The Cabinet collectively provides strategy leadership to the Council. There was an error in the original produced agenda using an old template. So we've revised the front sheet that's been published on the website and a supplement there. So we'll be using obviously the amended version tonight as we work through. So nothing too different in the order or anything. It's just a few bits and pieces. So are there any apologies, Vanessa?
No apologies, Chair.
Thank you. Are there declarations of interest by members or officers?
There were none in advance, Chair.
Okay, does anyone wish to make any declarations? Okay, Councillor Dixie.
Thank you, Alan. St Peter's Primary School, which is just a few hundred yards from here, is looking into adopting the school street scheme, which some of you may be familiar with, which aims to improve safety around schools by limiting traffic in the morning and in the afternoon for about 40 minutes. And it's been very successful elsewhere in the country and in the county, and it's administered by Kent County Council. And there was a meeting of which Mel was there, and Neil Baker was there, and the headmistress was there, as well as officers from Kent County Council. And we were all very positive about it. And I suggested at this meeting that we should consider adopting these proposals, put them into our transport plan, part of our local plan, and Mel was very much in favour of that. I think you were, Pip, as well, weren't you? As was Neil Baker, who was there, and spoken to Richard about it, Richard Moore, and he says he's going to put it in the updated revisions to the local plan. So I think it's a very positive bit of news.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dixie. That's fine. I think, was that an announcement rather than a declaration?
I think it was an announcement, yes.
That's fine. That's not a problem at all. That's okay. So we just clear that. So there was no declarations from us on the floor, but obviously we listened to Councillor Dixie's announcement there. And obviously I'm very confident that we can let that work its way through the system and see where we go from there. Thank you for that. And that's a useful bit of information, and we'll find out some more about that. Thank you so much. It's really good for that. And are there any other announcements by members, the Cabinet members? Was there another announcement, Councillor Dixie? No, it's okay, it's fine. Anybody else? No, that's great. Okay then. So we got one announcement there, quite some interesting things there. Right, we've got a public speaker tonight, who's down to speak under items 8 and 12. And that public speaker will be called to speak to us just prior to those items. The next thing on the agenda is the minutes of the meeting held on 25th of March 2024. We can agree those by general assent, but if there are any comments that people wish to make, of course they're happy to do so. Okay, can we just indicate that the general assent is fine? Thank you for that. Okay. References from committees. On this particular Cabinet meeting, there are no references to note. So we start on part A in a moment or two, which is item 7. It's the first one. So the item part A of the meeting, of course, is for when public participation can be taken. So not on this particular item. Item 7 now is the accounts to write off of 2024. We're going to consider a report by Nikki Mills, Service Director of Finance and Procurement and Section 151 Officer, and Rob May, Head of Finances. I think Tricia Marshall's here, and Nikki Mills is here. Yeah. So thank you. If there's any questions at all during our conversation. So can I ask Councillor Sole to introduce the item, please?
Thank you, Alan. This is an annual report to write off any debts that are irrecoverable. It has to be done every year as sort of part of sort of general accounting procedures, if nothing else. Before these debts are written off, they'd have gone through a significant amount of chasing and discussions with the debtors to try and get them to pay or go into payment plans or whatever. And this really is the last step from an accounting point of view. It doesn't actually write the debt off. If those people can come up with the money, we will still get it off them if we can, but we need to make sure that certainly from the accounts we provide for this. So this report details all debts over £10,000 which have to come to us to see what they are. Some of the things like, for example, council tax, the figures there which do look very high, of course that isn't all ours. Our share of that's only about 11%, so it's not quite as shocking as it might seem. So not really much else to say. The report does detail individual amounts, and it talks about why they cannot pay. With the larger ones, it's normally because the companies have gone into insolvency. So really it's in the matter of the receivers now to see if we get anything out of that. Nothing else to add.
Thanks for that, Mike. Has anyone got any comments to do that, or shall we? Because I'm quite happy just to I think we just have to note those, don't we? Yes, we just to note those as some agreed practice and go forward. We happy to note those, all of us? Thank you for that. That's noted. Okay. So the next item 8, is to consider a report by Bill Hicks, Service Director of Place, and Richard Moore, Head of Transport and Environment. Rebecca Booth is here to help us through the conversations and discussion about this item if we need to. And I hand over to speaker. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to hand over to Charlotte Cornell in a moment to introduce the item. But before that, we have a public speaker for this, you might recall, and that is Julie Kirby-Smith. So please come forward, make yourself comfortable, and you've got 3 minutes to address.
Okay, thank you. My name's Julia Kirby-Smith. I'm Executive Director of the Better Food Traders Organisation, which is a trade body really for sustainable retailers, and I also chair the Eating Better Alliance. So I speak from a position of knowing quite a lot about food, farming, sustainability, and so on. And I just wanted to comment on this because as hopefully you're aware, the Kent Food Partnership was established last year, and it's just been awarded the nationally recognised Sustainable Food Places status. And there's some really good work going on around Kent, thinking around the strategic role of food to deal with public health issues, placemaking issues, economy, retail, all sorts of things, and of course sustainability. And one of the things I wanted to sort of recommend to the Cabinet was really to say how supportive I am of this right to grow policy or proposal, sorry, and also to encourage you to work with the Kent Food Partnership, because I think there are lots of other examples of right to grow that can be accessed and pilots that can be talked about through that Kent Food, through the Food Partnership and through the Sustainable Food Places framework. And I just also wanted to flag that the notes to this agenda point included mention of Kent Community Oasis Garden, and they're mentioned because they're finalists in the Green Gown Awards 2023 for the student engagement category, which is a really brilliant award, and they're an absolutely brilliant organisation. And very sadly, they're just one of the many organisations, communities, habitats and special places that are under threat from the University of Kent's proposal to build a new town between Blean and Tyler Hill. So just wanting to flag that all of these things are connected. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. Charlotte, can you take it from there, please?
Thank you very much, Alan. So the Right to Grow motion, as you all know, was passed by full council last October. And this report seeks Cabinet approval to implement a Right to Grow pilot scheme across the district. The new pilot proposes that groups, voluntary constituted groups, take on full management and maintenance of these pilot sites, that we examine through the pilot a variety of models and different types of tenure of land, that a site assessment is needed to be made by officers before they're part of the pilot, and that, as I said before, groups must be constituted in order to be part of this pilot scheme and must hold public liability insurance to undertake their activities on the land. So the report details some proposed sites, and we've tried to spread them out across the district, a mixture of housing revenue held land and more sort of regularly held land. We want to, some groups that we are hoping to work with are already in existence, and some are nascent and just beginning to be formed. And I think that variety allows us to really test our models, how we give advice, how we communicate with groups around licenses and best use of land, and also what fits where and what's not possible where and why. So we're testing ourselves really in this pilot, not the groups per se. We're testing whether our processes are right to enable them to succeed on this land. So it's really to be looked at in this way. And of course, I know we as a council remain wholly supportive of trying to use our land to increase biodiversity, to in some places produce food and help not only people's pockets, but I think it's really interesting you mentioned placemaking, and I think that's a huge part of this right to grow as well, about cementing you and your family and your community in the environs even further and taking ownership and love in what you have, and hopefully that extends to a district. So we actually do have some small amends to the report, and I've discussed this with Rebecca before. Perhaps I'll seek your advice, Alan, on how, if they are amends or if it's just to be noted and then the report perhaps recirculated. But if I can, we have been made aware that the Hales Place Action Group no longer wish to pursue the right to grow at Hales Place Pond area, which is one of the sites in the proposed list. So we'd like to look for alternative sites in Canterbury for the housing land option. And we do have two, maybe even three groups that have approached us and are very interested. Certainly Havenweb have expressed an interest in a housing site, which is Hever Place, Farley Road. And also Starry and Broad Oak Residents Association have a proposal. We would like to suggest that we go away, have a look at both of these on their merits, and come to a conclusion as to which one is taken forward and which one's in a place to go forward in lieu of the Hales Place Action Group in the report. The proposal, if I can scroll down and find out actually the wording, which I know that I'm always slow to. Here we go, Alan. The resolution is to deliver and monitor an initial 3-year pilot right to grow scheme across the Canterbury district in a number of locations. You will see in the report that there are some options, option 1, 2 and 3, and one option was for a 1-year scheme. It was felt that this wasn't long enough, otherwise you're limited in some areas to just annuals, not allowing saplings to embed and sort of take over, and not allowing your scheme for the planting of the land to really come to any literal and metaphorical sense of fruition. But perhaps, again, speaking to Rebecca just earlier, bearing in mind that a 3-year plan would take us right up to the end of our elected tenure. We would be right on to the re-election period. And I know that we as a cabinet would like to see and discuss the results of a scheme which was brought early to full council before the end of this council. Maybe we would even, I would be interested to see how this comes out in discussions, consider a 2 or 2.5 year pilot scheme instead. So I seek a seconder.
Yeah, thanks for that. Do you want to come back on any points of fact or interest on that before we start, Rebecca?
No, actually, Charlotte's covered it really, really well.
That's great. Okay. I think just on the points you make, I think as Cabinet tonight, we're pretty much agreeing a principle more than anything else. And perhaps if wording needs to be tweaked a little bit, it would just be with discussion between the officer and the Cabinet lead for open space sites to be agreed, you know, something like that might be more appropriate. Otherwise, we are boxing ourselves a little bit into a corner, aren't we? So something like that might be a good minor amendment, perhaps, to lead us forward. But I saw Mel's hand up. Let's start the conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Councillor Cornell, for your introduction to the report and for coming up with those small amendments, which is really great because was a little bit my concern. I mean, obviously, I think the scheme's great and it's great that it went through the full council and the report's great and all of that. I was just, some of the issues were the timing of the pilot. I feel that is a little bit too long because it doesn't give us the opportunity to actually see how it's performed. And also, you know, I do enjoy gardening. I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but you can kind of get a sense of how it's working out after a year, because especially for growing vegetables, it's sort of seasonal, isn't it? You start in autumn, preparing the soil, put a few garlic in, a bit of onions. Then by the spring, you start putting a bit more in, and then you start seeing the yield. And by the end of the summer, you've got your fruit, and then you start all over again. So it's kind of a yearly thing, isn't it? And I mean, I'm sure there's some exceptions. So, so I reckon that you could probably get. So I'm not sure if the pilot's a year because of that element of things or the administrative side of things. I was wondering whether we could, 2.5 years still feels quite a long time. There seems to be a stop and a pause on any other projects happening during that time, which also seems a shame. So I was wondering if we were to do a 2-year pilot, whether after a year we could sort of open it up a little bit for more projects rather than just 4 projects, that's it, 2 years, nothing else is happening. So a bit of flexibility with that. And then I noticed there seems to be a change from the original report about, there's in, what is it, page 22, number 5, enforcement with regards to community guerrilla garden within Canterbury District continues on the non-pilot right to go sites. This is to protect the integrity of the pilot scheme. But not including existing sites, I think was on the last report. So there are some existing sites, we don't know about them, but it would be a shame if that was now going to be that they all have to dig up all their vegetables, everything like that, when they've just been going on quite happily, sort of thing. So I don't know if we could make that amendment on this report as well. So just sort of 2 amendments about how long the pilot is, either having the 2. Those are what I wanted to suggest, Chair, if that was all right, for the amendment to be a shorter pilot with the sort of option after a year to bring in more projects if things are going all right, and then the enforcement bit to say set for existing schemes that are already happening. Is that what?
Iterative approach, maybe let the scheme grow a little bit as if it works out well or whatever, a little bit earlier. Be more mindful, you're suggesting that of monitoring every couple of years or so, not be shy of just moving gently forward if it's possible to do so. And also to be mindful that there are 1 or 2 schemes out there that have some history, and what do we do with those? So I've just got the indication from Susie Wakeham, then I'll come back to you if I can, Michael. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. I think the 3-year bit was about giving the groups a 3-year lease rather than anything shorter. So I wonder whether the solution might be to give those groups a 3-year lease, commit to a report back in 2 years so that the actual pilot scheme's reviewed. And then on the enforcement, I wouldn't want a blanket approach. Case-by-case basis, we'll review what's going on and take appropriate action in consultation with the Cabinet member.
Is it okay?
Yeah, come back, Mel.
Yeah, so would it explicitly say that there, or just kind of case by, how would that be worded in that document? Because I think some people have read it and gotten a bit worried about their potatoes, sort of thing.
I guess actually, Mel, this is exactly why we're here tonight, because we've had that chance to all of it read it, pulled it together. We've had some meetings beforehand, haven't we? So obviously what Susie Wakeham said is sort of a bit of a solution there. I think at the end of this, we need to pull this together, what goes to full council. I think we're sort of minded on the principle, and there's some bits there that we need to get a little bit clearer, so happy with that. Yeah. Did you just want to finish that, Mel, and then I'll come to Michael?
Just so we can make it clear what that means in terms of enforcement and the existing historical sites, and also so it's clear in black and white. And then also, I would still go for a shorter pilot, maybe 1.5 years. But I just feel like you will get a gauge of, most gardeners would know what if it was working after a year, because that's a cycle, isn't it? So that's a year plus 6 months to sort of work it all out. But see what the others say.
No, that's absolutely fine, Mel. Thank you. Yeah, Michael, please.
Thank you, Alan. If additional sites come forward over the next 12 to 18 months, do we need to wait for the 3 years before we pick them up? And the reason I ask this question is that over the next 12 months or so, we should have a much better idea of our property data, our property portfolio, because we'll have a digital property asset management system. And I think a lot of these vacant sites, potential sites, will come apparent. So do we need to wait until the 3 years are up before we adopt additional sites?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I think we're looking at sort of more of an iterative approach already, aren't we? That working through that, so that feeds into that previous sort of conversation there a little bit, doesn't it? So we'll come back on that. I think that's a good point. Charlotte.
I would suggest, what I'm going to suggest is that 1 year is still too short a time for many reasons. Whilst the annual gardening cycle is a year, we're at the wrong point of the year to start a year cycle, bearing in mind that anyone that's thinking of planting courgettes and tomatoes right now is far too late, and they'll be panicking. So what I would really, if we started it now, it would be a minimum of a year and 8 months, really, to see the full tenure of what's possible on a space to come out, even if you're planting annuals or annual vegetables. So for that reason, I think a 2-year report is the way that we should go on granting 3-year licenses, because that's the license standard. A 2-year report on the pilot, but if amenable, Cabinet and officers, after a year, I'll give someone else holding the similar Cabinet position will give an update to Cabinet on the progress of the pilot to date. And if there's been any capacity or interest to add an extra site or two because we felt it necessary to get the full value of a pilot, then at that point, in discussion with the cabinet member, it might be a really good break and review point before that update, which is an informal update to cabinet. It's not officer led. It'll be the cabinet member providing an update at the beginning of a cabinet meeting. But sort of granting dispensation to the Open Spaces team and yourselves to add in or redact schemes if necessary during that pilot period.
Sounds like putting this together now. So, Mike, can you come back on it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think we what we mustn't do is wrap this up in too much red tape for people. Got to make it as easy as possible. And I was a bit worried when we talked about properly constituted community groups, and I want to make sure that if something needs to be done like that, that we help people with this. I mean, I'm thinking particularly of the one on there that I know, Crookenden Place, lovely little community of people that have lots of events and things, hold barbecues, do all lots of things around their housing area, but they probably aren't constituted in any way. And I wouldn't want them to be scared off from doing something like this when there's some land there that's doing nothing. It's just got some scrubbed land on it, and they could make it look nice. I'm really pleased that this also talks about plants of biodiversity. You know, if they want to just plant some flowers and make it look nice, they don't have to get out there and plant potatoes. So that's good. But on the growing side, I think we do need to be looking, medium to long term, because people are going to want to plant things like, easier stuff. Blackberries, raspberries, rhubarb, those sorts of things that you're not going to plant and expect to crop, next year in any big way. Some people might want to put some fruit trees in. They may be the ideal place for just one or two apple trees or something. So I would like to think that we've got the powers, if it goes wrong, to take this land back. But if it doesn't go wrong, just let it stay there, let it grow, and this should be a good thing. I'm particularly interested on the Crookenden Place thing to get involved with how we do that, and with residents and to help them along with that. So, but let's not have red tape. Let's have garden string.
Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear. Okay. I've got Alex Susbutty first, and then Chris. So, yes, please.
Yeah, very quick one. I'm very glad that Mike didn't burst into song there as well. I think this is the details around it, and I think it's very much that case is if we can make this happen. And just a question around how much we would publicise this and how much we would let groups know about it as well, because obviously we've got the ones that have come forward, but I think it's quite key that without a promise that it's going to happen, that we would like to hear from as many groups as possible, so that we can actually, and part of that review as we go forward is looking at the number of groups that have expressed an interest and how it gets to that point as well. So I'd like to see quite a push around this, is once it starts going, that we can actually make a thing about it and see if we can encourage more groups to do it and start the ball rolling a bit more.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously our ward councillors should be the lead on that, shouldn't they, really, to be honest about it? So, Chris.
Yes, similar to Alex, my point was about comms, particularly whilst we've identified 4 sites here, some of the actual physical land may be quite large. And so whilst we're thinking about one community space essentially taking it over, I know the site we're talking about at Columbia Park, for example, is actually perhaps quite a chunk. So the question then is, can multiple groups kind of partner to do something together? I think the 3-year plan is important, because essentially this is us testing an idea with a community group and giving them the security of tenure, but also realizing from some of our works with friends groups, these things are difficult to get off the ground. Some people try, and after a period of time, sometimes they just don't work. So I think we've got to give them enough time to maybe kind of like try, if the initial volunteer group goes, they can pick it up and try again. And cutting that shorter might kind of create additional kind of challenges. So I'd be up for the longer period with a review, as Charlotte has suggested.
Yeah, come back now if you want to, yeah.
Yeah, just a couple of points. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Councillor Cornell. But from the people that have contacted me, they're all quite experienced gardeners and been doing it quite a long time. And there's quite a lot of organisations out there wanting already set up and ready to go. So I don't think that 3 years is necessary, because I think they'll be okay. But that's what we're here for, to debate that. I think perhaps. I don't know what we're going to come up with tonight, Chair, but are we just going to make recommendations or what? In terms of when it actually starts, can I just ask the officers? So it will be going to May, so then it's going to be formalised and voted on, I guess. No. So that start date is today, yeah. So will it all just be, all the mechanics will be kicking in today? When is the official start date? When does ground zero start? That's what I'm sort of trying to establish. Today. So 2 years date. Okay, so I get your point about the 2 years thing, because of if we started in autumn, fine. But yeah, I still think it should be shorter and have that flexibility to bring in other groups as we go along, not just a point blank 3 years and then nobody else can do anything. It's a long time.
I think we kind of got that covered now, haven't we? I think that'd be fine. Shall I just take Pip and then come back if that's okay with you? Thanks.
Thank you. So I think my view is that, yes, it needs 2 years before we find out whether 1 year's whole growing season has been successful. I think 3 years allowance of the lease gives some security of tenure. What I'm picking up from Councillor Dawkins is the hurry up to change it from a pilot to something more, expanded and more permanent. I think that might be, and I guess if after the second growing year and in the last year of this administration we can see some success, there's no reason why something wider couldn't start before the end of a 3-year pilot. And I'm wondering if that might kind of satisfy everyone's, security of tenure, a whole growing season, some review, plus if it's proving successful, widening it out before the end of the pilot scheme. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Pip. Do you want to come back on then, Rebecca, and then I'll come back to Connie in a second?
Yeah, it was just a little bit around the timing. It's not quite as cut and dried as we might hope, because this is a pilot of I know at the moment there's 4 sites, but it sounds like there's going to be a little bit of flexibility in that, because we need to look at some other options for ones that are potentially not going ahead. On the majority of those sites then, we may have a couple of formed groups ready to go, but on the others, there are no interested groups at the moment. So it will be a case of promoting those sites. Now, it may be that nobody comes forward, that what we don't do is impose it on anyone. So the interest has to come from the community. That's an unknown. So we're not saying that from tomorrow, people would start growing things on a number of these sites. There might be several months go by before there's any interest. There might not be any interest at all, in which case I think we need a bit of an internal review there. If we're not getting any interest for a particular site, that we may have something to switch it with something. So the timing, is dependent on some of these factors as well.
Yeah, that sort of fits into this sort of flexibility sort of thing about it, doesn't it? It seems to be driving through. Connie and then Mike Sol, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I very much welcome this and the discussion that's taking place. I also know that there are, as Councillor Dawkins has said, some very experienced groups around, and one of the way forwards might be to encourage them to mentor a group which is less experienced. And I hate to say this, but courgettes and tomatoes aren't the only thing. And I have a very successful amount of winter vegetables that I grow. Cabbages, spring cabbages, whatever. But I think the important thing is the sharing of expertise. And I was very impressed by what goes on in Whitstable in Stream Walk. And, sort of absolute novices turn up and are guided very gently and expertly by other people. And I was just thinking, using that mentoring approach might be the way forward, because it's a bit daunting to sort of be given some land and told, go on then, get on with it. Solly's Orchard, you see, that's I think that's a brilliant scheme there as well. And going back to the point about you can also plant trees. There's some beautiful quince trees in Solly's Orchard. Just thought I'd mention that. And it's sort of one of those things that people who are experienced will have a look at which way the sort of the wind blows, which way the sun is, and so forth. So sharing of knowledge, I think, is important. And one of the things that perhaps we could do as a council is promote through organisations that we already know about mentoring that, and perhaps asking the Stronger Kent community group if they know of any sort of mentors and that. Just a thought.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike, do you want to come back?
Yeah, there was one other thing in the report that worried me a little bit, and you won't often hear me say this, but it was the fact we were going to be charging people for this, and without any indication in this report as to how much that charge might be. Some of these groups may be large, some may be small, but if this charge is too large, it's going to scare people off. And if it's small, well, there's almost no point in having it in the first place, because with some of the, like the HRA land, we may be saving a bit of money ourselves and we won't be cutting the grass on this piece of land. So I think we need to sort of have some idea, you know, are we talking thousands of pounds, a few £100, £10? I think we need to know what this charge might be, because, you know, it shouldn't be used to raise money for this council. This is a good thing. We want people to grow. We want them to, you know, to improve their mental and physical health as well as their local environments. And you know, and so there shouldn't really be a cost of doing this.
Do you have an answer to that, Rebecca or Susie? Sorry.
Chair. The charge that's referred to is the charge for legal and property time for actually drawing up the leases. It's a cost, a genuine cost to the council. So in the spirit of kind of user pays, it's kind of included in here. Obviously, if you decided not to charge that, you set the budget, so that's fine. But I think this is a really good example of why it's a pilot, because we need to work through all of this stuff. We need to work through the staff resource, the actual cost to the council, what works, what doesn't, how far we advertise, what the take-up might be. There are lots of elements in here that we really need to explore, and that's why we want to do a pilot first before we open it out into a wider scheme. So if you don't want to charge for that, I think we're talking a few £100, but if you don't want to charge that, then that's your decision.
Yeah.
Well, if it's only going to be a few £100, can I propose we don't charge and we scrap that now from the report?
I think I would just counter that with, if we, you know, let's get it off the ground and then we look at it in 18 months' time or 2 years' time, and you know, if it's, you know, something we need to charge for, or we can put a small fee on, or whatever might be the case, but probably going to put people off, aren't we, taking a bit of a flyer on this to start with? So I think we just see whether we can do it. It's only 4 schemes, isn't it? Possibly maybe 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 schemes at the end of the couple of years, isn't it? It's hardly huge numbers, is it? So, okay. So I think that might be something that we defer. I think it may be better to put defer rather than kill the opportunity of a charge should we really need to. I think in the future that'd be more appropriate, I think, at this moment in time. You happy with that, Charlotte, on that one? Yes.
I support scrapping the charge during the pilot scheme for the schemes that we choose to take on, seeing as they're only a cluster, and actually they're chosen by us and we're working with them, and there's sort of a mutual favour as we work out the practicalities of the scheme. I wouldn't say we defer, because that sounds like it's a threatening cost that will linger over them and could be imposed later down the line. So I just would be in favour, actually, in backing, as Mike says, in this pilot scheme, there will be no cost. However, as the scheme is rolled out, you know, in future, potentially there will be licence costs chargeable.
We can defer that decision to the end of the review period.
Yeah.
It's really, can't we?
I would like to, because the I don't know if I can just add on here. The resolution is to deliver and monitor an initial 3-year pilot right to grow. I would like to propose an amendment to deliver and monitor an initial 2-year right to grow. Might anyone?
I'll second.
That's been a really good conversation. What I think I'm going to do now, take an easy way out for a second or two, because I think it needs to do it. Charlotte, you're the lead on this, aren't you? Could you summarise, and I think I've got it in my head where we should be, but summarise where you think you are as Cabinet lead on this. Then we'll think about that, and then we need to take a moment or two to see where this report needs amending before it goes to council. We'll make note of that. I think that might be the case. And, okay.
The only amendment I'm proposing is...
Sorry, just to clarify, it's not going to council. Decisions being made this evening. You're resolving tonight.
Even better.
Yeah,
even
so the
better.
decision
Yeah,
will be made.
of course we are, aren't we, tonight? Yeah, good thinking. We were going to go to council. That's even better. We do that then now. Let's definitely do that. Yeah.
I would propose that the resolution, which is amended to be a 2-year pilot right to grow scheme, because I would like the culmination of the scheme to come back to Cabinet and to be able to report back to full council on something before the end of this council. I feel it was one of our first it was one of the first motions that went to full council, one of the first that was almost, unanimously passed by a council that agreed, and it would be excellent to be able to reflect back to all the councillors that backed it and be able to go into a new election period and hopefully a new council being able to roll this out more permanently. That would fill me with great joy. I feel that 1 year is too short for all the reasons mentioned about seasonality earlier, but 2 years would hit the sweet spot. And I believe that the Open Spaces team, that they went with 3 years because that was initially reflected in our motion, but actually felt that a shorter period of time might be better practice. So I think we'd have support from the Open Spaces team as well in reducing that to 2. So that's why I'm proposing this amendment, appreciating that licenses are 3 years, and that's a slightly separate consideration. In the resolution, I also would like to suggest that we say, and to devolve, something along the lines of to devolve edits to the report to reflect the discussion at Cabinet to the Open Spaces team and Cabinet Member 4, so that we can reflect those discussions about the fees, the detail, the coming back to, and the coming back to report to Cabinet after a year on an update, etc. That can be reflected, and we can make those edits. Thank you, Chair.
I think actually what we can overcome that problem to agree or disagree in a minute, but yeah, it's all right. Yeah, to delegate decision to, yeah. So I think you summarise that all together. I think we know exactly where we're going to go on this one, but go for it.
Yeah. So I've put to deliver and monitor an initial 2-year pilot right to grow scheme across the Canterbury district in a limited number of locations, and to delegate to the Service Director of Place the ability to make minor changes to pilot scheme in consultation with the portfolio holder.
See, I knew the wording would be there somewhere. Thank you very much for that.
Excellent, thank you all.
And then, of course, that allows us the opportunity there to look at maybe putting another scheme in, or swapping a scheme out, or splitting the scheme up as too big, or whatever might be the case. And then hopefully at the end of the report period, we will have a number of schemes that have evolved over that period of time. And I think that's quite an exciting thing actually to do. Really looking forward to seeing how that goes. From somebody who travels between a lettuce and a tomato, working out which is which. It's difficult from a gardening point of view for me, but I will be guided by allotment holders all around the room that do that. So,
Tomatoes are red.
They can be yellow as well, I think. Just for my own peace of mind, so that resolution that we're going for now will mean that item 5 will have that extension of saying, but not those historical sites. Yeah.
Yeah, the
Okay,
delegate
right,
decision to add and take away those sites as may or may not be appropriate as the time goes. Not that we're going to go massively, because the officer's not going to go for that, and neither's the whoever the lead member for Open Spaces is going to be will have to be mindful of all of those decisions that come with it.
I mean, that's an enforcement issue, Chair. I thought we agreed it was on a case-by-case basis on those schemes, rather than...
I'm happy with that. I don't see a problem with that, really. It seems a bit silly to do anything else, to be honest about it, doesn't it? And again, I think that decision needs to be delegated to the officer in conjunction with the...
I would personally be against an amnesty, because we have quite a few protected environments, you know, that where there are some actions on, and we need to protect our SSIs, and there's some very sensitive sites. So it can't be an amnesty, but everything's on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable enough. I think that's the officer would recommend a course of action, and that would need to be agreed between the cabinet member and the officer. I think that's allowed, isn't it, on this particular case? Or...
Thanks. I mean, I think that's how we work anyway on all enforcement cases. It's all on a case-by-case basis, being as pragmatic as we need to be. So I think it's business as usual there.
Sounds reasonable. That's fine by me. Yeah, and as you say, it allows everything, doesn't it? Otherwise, it could just get feral, couldn't it? Exactly, really. So that's fine. So too many puns. Sorry. But are we happy with that? And we're happy to really simplify it right down to that proposal. So can you just read that proposal one more time, and then we're going to vote for that, okay?
To deliver and monitor an initial 2-year pilot right to grow scheme across the Canterbury district in a limited number of locations, and to delegate to the Service Director of Place the ability to make minor changes to the pilot scheme in consultation with the portfolio holder.
I'm happy with that. So, did we have a seconder? Can't remember. Yeah, thank you for that. So we got a proposal and second. I didn't catch that.
So Charlotte, you're happy to propose that?
Yeah.
Yes, I am.
Thank you. And Councillor Dawkins, are you seconding that proposal?
Yes, please.
Lovely, thank you.
In that case, we need to vote. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Baldock?
For.
Councillor Dawkins? Councillor Charlotte Cornell?
For.
Councillor Chris Cornell?
For.
Councillor Dixie? Councillor Hazelton?
For.
Councillor Nolan?
For.
Councillor Rickett?
4.
Councillor Sol?
4.
And that's carried unanimously, Chair.
Thank you for that. That's a really exciting piece of policy out there now, isn't it? That's let's see what comes out of it. Looking forward to getting those groups together. Be fantastic. So we do that. And maybe we need to meet those groups when they've had a year or so, and we have a bit of an outing. I think it'd be really good, really good. So it'd be good. Thank you very much. So. Right, so item 9 now is Strategic Grants Performance Review. We're going to consider the reports again that you've all got in the pack there, Director of Place by Bill Hicks and Michelle Mubarak. We will ask Councillor Connie Nolan to summarise and propose that piece of
Thank you.
cabinet business.
I think the first thing to say is that a total of 88 organisations applied, but the actual pot wasn't big enough to allow 88 applications, unfortunately, so there were 19 successful. There is a very strict criteria which is agreed and then looked at by the officers. And I'd like to take this opportunity, Chair, to thank the officers because they put a lot of work in to make sure everything is fair and transparent. They provide advice to organisations before they apply so that the chances of sort of being successful. And one of the things that is just a sign of the times really is that the actual standard of applications is very, very high at the moment. So it's very difficult against the criteria. They're scoring very, very highly. So it wasn't a case that some applications weren't worthy. It was just a case that some met the criteria more closely than others. And if we had a bigger pie to share, we would have shared more of the pie, but that's just the way it goes. So I invite the Cabinet Committee to look at the fact that of the applications, particularly the criteria that was looked at was around, you know, in round one was intergeneration activity to tackle loneliness and or poor mental health, and to deepen young people's understanding of equalities, inclusion and tackling prejudice. In round two, we broadened it out slightly. Again, cost of living, but also sort of early intervention for men's mental health, promoting active lives, and again for young people, which I know Councillor Dawkins will be particularly pleased about, that we were looking at this, activities to tackle boredom and antisocial behaviour to create a greater sense of belonging and ownership. And the organisations that were given the grants, what happened was the officers organised that an officer and myself, and then latterly Councillor Mellish, who is chair of the committee, went to visit these organisations. And it's really quite heartwarming, the fact that there are so many organisations that step forward and want to do things in our community to improve our community. And my fellow cabinet councillors will see from the fact that you know, so many of the ones that are used, and it's just failed on me. I was going so well. Thank you. Swap over. Absolutely. And my cabinet councillors will see that one of the things that we did do is we looked at sort of across the whole district to make sure that there was an even, or as even as possible, supply of grants to rural areas, as well as to what we call the 3 towns, to projects for young children and adults.
What are you looking for?
Thank you very much. That's it. I just wanted to go down on this moment. Just
2 fingers.
two fingers. Oh, I
Two
see.
fingers. Put 2 fingers.
We got a micro IT meltdown there, have we? Or is it college glasses steamed up, or what is it? Okay, not to worry. It's just we're pressed on the second.
Okay, no, the point that I'm trying to make is that we try to be as fair as possible across the district. And I know that there would be organisations that were felt that they should have got a grant and didn't, but we did try very hard. So I'd like to just go straight to the options available. So option number 1, to accept and continue to run the strategic grants programme in the current form with the recommended priorities. Option number 2, to continue to run the strategic grants programme with amended priorities, or option 3, to make changes to the strategic grant programme. I also like to remind Cabinet that it isn't just the officers and the Cabinet person responsible. There is a committee which Councillor Mellish chairs that talks this through with other councillors from across the different parties, so that it isn't sort of just the ideas of the Cabinet member. So we are recommending option 1 because it's gone through the democratic process of the strategic grant panel, and you will notice, my fellow Cabinet councillors, that we are wanting to go live with the applications for the strategic round. 26th of April, thank you. Deadline for submissions 3rd of June, with the decision by the 17th of June. And again, I'd like to thank the officers for the hard work that they put in to make sure that they deal with what increasingly are record numbers of applications, and do so in a very fair way. So do I need a seconder for that? Yep. Do I have a seconder, please?
Thank you, Sir Councillor Sol. So we've proposed and seconded, so now we can open the debate, yeah? So, and obviously make any changes or amendments that we might feel appropriate, or if not, we can vote on it and agree it. So, any thoughts? Councillor Sol.
It strikes me this is an incredibly well-run procedure here of allocating these grants, and it's clear from the data we've got in front of us that it's pretty equally spread out across the district and across other demographics as well. So I'm very happy to support this. I think it's you know, we do a good job with the limited resources we've got.
Councillor Dawkins.
Thank you. Yeah, just some comments really. I mean, thanks for all the work that you've done. It really is a testament of the sign. It's a sign of the times that we have 88 applied and only 19 look successful. And, you know, it's really, really, well, quite distressing, isn't it? That there's so many organisations there all trying to grab hold of a tiny, tiny pot, and that pot's getting smaller for everybody. So, you know, I wish we could offer more. But that's the sign of the times, isn't it? And I hope that changes over time. We've got to, and also pleased to, obviously, thanks for mentioning me, but yeah, pleased to see that there's the youth element in there, and I look forward to seeing how that materialises with the new projects coming down.
Councillor Ricketts.
Yeah, thank you. I wholeheartedly support this, and I think one of the things I've been particularly impressed by since being on cabinet is when you come across these or some other areas where we're rewarding money is the work that the officers do and the expertise the officers have in sifting through these grants. As Councillor Dawkins said, it will be fantastic to be able to help even more organisations, but that's the money. I think there's often a perception that the council has some money and we kind of dish it out here and there and there's a big pot that we can dip into, but increasingly there isn't a big pot that we can dip into, and the way that money is allocated these days really does follow on to a really strict process, and it's a process guided by some really strong principles, of which I think you can see through this report is an excellent example. So more power to the process as it's happened, and let's hope that we can extend this in the future.
Yeah, thanks for that, Alex. Yeah, I think I certainly felt more comfortable this year that the grants were quite strategic and well thought through and very fair, and that they met the criteria. And I think I just want to be open. I mean, the criteria set out in the report, and are we happy for the new set of grants to be proposed, judged, if you like, or whatever you like to call it? Judge sounds horrible, doesn't it? But you know, scored against those criteria that we have listed now, and or is there anything that's worrying you on that, or do you want to? Because this is at least on the first time round, I think people will have already written their proposals, won't they? Looking at those things there, and they seem to be reasonable. I think the additional weighted areas are things that must always be making those decisions, and organisations and new to the funding programme, and there were some this time, which is really encouraging, and projects designed for environmental sustainability are there as well, which links into our underpinning theme for this administration, of course. Any thoughts at all, any of you? So what we're going to propose in a minute in that case is that we go forward into another round, dishing out whatever Mike can find in his back pocket and tucked in his collar and all the rest of it, and in the grant money, and it will be whatever money's there will be allocated against these principles and criteria. Are we happy to do that as it stands now on the paper? So in that case, we can vote. So voting for is to vote for option 1. And just for real clarity, because I've mothballed around this one, so to accept to continue to run the Strategic Grants Programme in the current form with the recommended priorities set out in Strategic Grant Panel. That's okay, that's what we're voting for, yeah? Okay, thank you.
So I'm just checking the proposal there. Bear with me just 2 seconds. I think the wording's slightly different, Chair, if you just want to. I think it was the one that Connie put through earlier.
Read that out.
Are you happy for me? To continue to run the strategic grants programme in the current form and agree the priorities and timetable put forward by the strategic grants panel. You happy with that? Seconder, okay? Sorry about that, just wanted to make sure that's correct. Okay, so a vote for that proposal. Councillor Baldock?
4.
Councillor Dawkins? Councillor Charlotte Cornell?
4.
Councillor Chris Cornell?
4.
Councillor Dixie? Councillor Hazelton?
4.
Councillor Nolan?
4.
Councillor Ricketts?
4.
Councillor Sol?
4.
That's carried unanimously, Chair.
Okay. This is item 10, which is the Canterbury District Parish Charter. They're going to consider a report. Tricia Marshall, Director of Corporate Services, Matthew Archer, Head of Corporate Governance, prepared the report. And Tricia Marshall is here tonight to ask any questions and help us through the conversations that we have. So, Councillor Alex Ricketts is Cabinet Member for Rural Stuff. Would you like to introduce the reports, please? Thank you.
I'm delighted to introduce some rural stuff. Yes, this has been, I mean, the whole parish charter process was something that was kicked off previously, perhaps in response to the need for better relationships between the City Council and the parishes. I am delighted to say that the process that we engaged in was a really excellent collaborative approach. It was a very small group put together with a mixture of council officers, parish clerks and parish councillors, as well as city councillors. There are a few substantive changes to the charter from previous years that have dealt with some specific issues. There are a few areas that have been clarified. A lot of those centre around information flow between the two levels of government. One being that we ask that parish councils inform us of their roster of meetings so that we can make sure we know what's going on. The other one, particularly from the parishes, was that we give them much more time to consider the consultations and other things we put out, as well as looking at the reporting of Section 106 and SIL money. Now, there's still a lot more to be done in terms of the relationship between the parishes and the City Council, but I think that the point of this charter is it sets a framework for discussion. We had a very good, very well attended, remarkably friendly but very open and frank meeting the other night, which I believe you attended as well. Well, I believe you sat next to me. And I think that set the tone for the fact that we can challenge, but as was said on the night, that we are all effectively trying to do the same thing, which is improve the area that we live in, look after the area for future generations and current generations indeed. And I think there's a recognition of that. And hopefully that this will go on to build better relations between ward councillors and the parishes in the areas they represent, and the officers and clerks of parish councils as well. So I think it's a really good build on previous documents and previous work. I think we've started the relationship through this process to go really well. There's a lot of work to be done. A lot of notes were taken the other night on what we can do. But I think the document itself, I recommend that you adopt, and we can move on and get on with the work. Thank you.
Yeah, are you happy to propose that, Alex? If you could just get somebody to second.
I'd better find the word to resolve. So the revised Canterbury District Parish Charter be adopted, and to delegate to the head of paid service the ability to make minor changes in consultation with the portfolio holder and parish council representatives. Do I have a second?
Thank you, Councillor Hazelton. That's appreciated. Okay, that's any questions? I think I'll go for Pip because she's put her hand up for that second in straight away, followed by Mike Sale.
Thank you, Alan. Yeah, so in a former life, I was a parish councillor, and not in this district. And I think the relationship between your district council and the parish, and the parish council is an important one and can often be fraught. And I think where it's a minefield ripe for misunderstanding, I think. And so I really welcome this document. I think, I was really sorry I couldn't come along to the meeting. I wasn't able to. But yeah, so I think it's a really good document. I really like the review of it in the first year, every 4 years of a new administration. And I think it absolutely sets the right tone. And I think, open communication is the key. The two tiers of governance won't always agree with one another, but they can certainly, respect one another's point of view and just keep the lines of communication open. So I think it's a really, really good document. Thank you.
Yeah, Mike. Thanks.
First of all, just for the record, in case I need to declare an interest, I am currently chair of Women's Wold Parish Council for my sins. I think what's really important here, if you look at the map on page 61, you can see just how much of our district is covered by parish councils. It's a significant geographical area and a significant amount of people that are represented by parish councils. And the 27 of them do a terrific job. I also noticed that Alan Atkinson's here today in the public gallery, and credit should go to him as well for not only the work that he's put into this, but you always know he's the voice of parish councils, and he keeps us on our toes. And I've no doubt he'll be waving this document at us many times, and rightfully so, as should all parish councillors, and indeed our own city councillors need. And I know they will be getting copies of this and make sure that they're trained and they understand what is in this, because we need that relationship between the two levels of local government there. Really important, great document. Yeah, let's make sure that we adhere to it and it doesn't just end up on the bookshelf.
Do you want to come back, Alex?
Yes, I would like to apologise for not mentioning Alan earlier on. It would have been impossible without him. So thank you, Alan, for attending those meetings and all the work you put in.
Thank you for that. And again, I really enjoyed sitting there with you at that meeting. Loads of people, good chats with people as well, and it was a warm and cordial thing. But also, it reminded us all that we've got still lots and lots of work to do, and we're not going to be shy and coming, back and reviewing that document again towards the end of this administration. So. That'd be absolutely fine. So it's been proposed and seconded, and we can go to vote now, can't we? Okay.
Can Chair. Councillor Baldock.
4.
Councillor Dawkins. 4. Councillor Charlotte Cornell.
4.
Councillor Chris Cornell.
4.
Councillor Dixie. 4. Councillor Hazelton.
4.
Councillor Nolan.
4.
Councillor Ricketts.
4.
And Councillor Saul.
4.
And that's carried unanimously, Chair.
Yeah, thanks for that. Right, just take a breath for a second. Okay. And as I said in the previous item, this is more rural stuff. So this is item 11 now on our agenda. That's a Bridge Neighbourhood Plan. We're going to consider this report, which is put together by Peter Davis, Director of Strategy and Improvement, Leah Whitlock, Head of Policy and Communications, and this falls to me to do that and to make the proposal in a moment. So I would just like to say that this is the first neighbourhood plan that this district has. I really, really hope that it won't be the last. I will, and again, Alan was instrumental in putting this together, and it's been tough, it's been long, and many, many lessons I'm sure have been learned all around, and I commend the work of Bridge Parish Council in preparing that plan. And all the stress that goes with the referendum and the campaigning and all of that stuff as well. So thank you to all of you for that. it's right that it comes to this Cabinet Committee to just consider that this is the right thing to do for the whole district. And that's all we're asking to do now, is to reinforce that decision made by the people of Bridge, which was not a close decision. It was a comfortable decision in favour of. So we've all had a chance to look at it. We've all had a chance to reflect on it. It was interesting to have those bit of feedback at that parish meeting the other night at council, which was really useful too. So I'm going to read out the proposal now without any further ado. And this is to resolve, this is our decision, right, that the council make the Bridge Neighbourhood Plan 2022 to 2037 in line with the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004 and the Neighbourhood Planning General Regulations 2012. So in essence, that becomes part of our planning policies, if you like, and the considerations that are put together going forward. So can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Sol, thank you very much indeed. Does anyone want to add to that? Councillor Sol.
I think it's worth acknowledging that Bridge have been trailblazers on this, and this has been a very long process, and there's been lots of ups and downs along the way. And I think not only will other parish councils be able to learn from the hard work that Bridge have put into this, and that's not just the parish council, the Neighbourhood Plan Committee included residents of the village as well. But I also think the City Council needs to learn as well. And I think many of the hiccups and frustrations that the parish council experienced through this were often, I won't say caused by the City Council, but it wasn't as smooth as it could have been. And we can hopefully learn from that as other parishes develop their neighbourhood plans. But I think this is a really good thing for the village. It's really positive in what's proposed for the improvements, and such as proposed village hall and car parking and securing public space and things. It's an excellent plan, and I'm very pleased that the village supported it. And I do look forward to other parishes also having their neighbourhood plans, and I've no doubt they will be looking at what Bridge have done and using it to a certain extent as a template as they start to compile theirs.
Councillor Ricketts.
Thank you. Yeah, just to echo that, I think Bridge are very fortunate in both their parish council and their residents in having a lot of skills and experience to be able to push something like this through. Not all parishes will be able to do this. But I know that there are several who've been looking at it, and hopefully, if this does go through this evening, then that will send a message to those that are perhaps looking at it that they should push ahead with it. I think that the more parishes that do this, conversely, the easier it probably makes the City Council's job, because you have a really, really strong idea of what local people want. You have a really, really strong idea of how they feel about certain areas of development, what's important to them, and that's there, and it's there to be considered. And carrying out this level of work and consultation in that level is not something that's always open to the district council to be able to do through any of the processes we go out. So the more of these that it's possible to develop, the better. And I do hope other parishes will be looking at this. And as Mike said, I think if the City Council can be there to help other parishes in adopting this, and with the lessons learned from this process, hopefully we'll see a few more of these in the life of this council. Thank you.
Thanks for that. I think perhaps sort of illustrated many things is they've been bold enough to put policies, their orange boxes, and their projects in their green boxes. And I think that to me reflected the thought process, actually, that they know what they want and they also know where they can deliver it. And I think that's probably a good, strong message for other parishes to come together. So is anybody else? Councillor Dawkins?
Yeah, it was just to commend the plan, really, how well written it is and how well put together, and how, like you just mentioned, it's really clear and easy to follow and everything. So yeah, really, really, really great. And I hope more parishes do it. To make sure that they get it's clear, as Councillor Ricketts said, to the council.
That's fine. If in that case, then we are going to resolve this. So to vote for is to allow that the Bridge neighbourhood plan to become part of planning in Canterbury, as I read out the proposal earlier, and it's been seconded. So now we're voting for to accept or not. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Baldock.
For.
Councillor Dawkins. Councillor Charlotte Cornell.
Four.
Councillor Chris Cornell.
Or
Councillor Dixie. Councillor Hazelton.
4.
Councillor Nolan.
4.
Councillor Ricketts.
4.
Councillor Sol.
4.
And that's carried unanimously.
Thank you for that. Jolly good. Okay, let's move on then. Sorry about a little mini delay. Just want to make sure we got our things organised. So this is item 12. And again, we've got a public speaker on item 12. Okay. So we're going to consider this report, which is a recommendation from Audit Committee for an external investigation into councillor conduct. So this report was put together by Tricia Marshall, Director of Corporate Services, along with Jan Geiler, our Head of Legal Services, here to help us through our debate, if we need to. The Cabinet member for this is Councillor Sol, who I'm quite happy to allow to obviously go forward on this one if you want to. And then I'll get Mike will go through the introduction to it. Then we have our public speaker. And I know we're all in Cabinet, we would very much like to take this item in public and let you have a little think about that while it's being introduced and a public speaker. And if we need to go into private session, we will, but I very much hope that we don't have to. So, Mike,
Sorry, can we take the public speaker first and then do the introduction?
Yeah. If it's okay with you, Mike, can I just ask our public speaker to speak now, and then we can take it a little bit smoother rather than the other way around. So would you like to, you sure? You're very welcome. Okay, that's fine. Thank you for that. So Mike, carry on. Yeah.
Well, Chair, there's not actually a lot I can add to this quite detailed report in front of us, and I don't really think there's there's much for me to say. It's all here. It's a long report, and I think really we should just open this up to any questions and debate.
Absolutely happy with that. I think we just ought to get a seconder if we can for that. So, yeah, sorry. If you like, yeah. So, yeah. So tonight is to resolve this item. It's with us tonight. So, to resolve not to conduct an external investigation into the conduct of 3 former councillors in relation to their disclosure of pecuniary interest and other significant interests. Can I second it for that? Councillor Hazelton. Yeah, sorry.
Can I just check which page of the document this is set out on? I'm struggling to find the
okay.
right page.
Yeah, sure.
I want to be absolutely clear on the
This
wording.
is what I'm proposing from the chair. Sorry. Is that right?
Do you want me
It's
to?
okay. Excellent. Yeah.
So there wasn't an officer recommendation because it was for Cabinet to make a decision upon. So you won't find in the usual way an officer recommendation on the front page. However, from the chair, that is the proposal. So it's looking for a seconder on that basis.
Okay. Because I was distracted looking for the wording, for which I apologise, Chair, could we have the proposal again? I think it is one that I wish to second, but I want to hear it again.
Absolutely, not a problem at all. Okay. So, I've lost the page now. There it is. Sorry. I shuffled my paperwork and lost the place. Yes. So we're going to resolve. So, not to conduct an external investigation into the conduct of 3 former councillors in relation to their discretionary pecuniary interests and other significant interests.
I'm happy to second that motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. So,
Alan, could you just say, was that not? Did you say not? Okay, right.
we're not going to go ahead with an external investigation. Okay. Or an independent investigation is the word that's used. Independent investigation. Thank you. We can open up the debate. There's any points you want to raise or think about or mention, providing they're in the documents that are in front of us, and we're not going to stray into the confidential documents at the back, the pink papers as we would call it. Any comments? Councillor Hazelton and Councillor Salt.
Thank you. Thank you, Alan. So I don't want to go into the ins and outs of it. It's all set out here in the, in the public papers. In my opinion, there's plenty there. What I did want to say was that I disagree with the audit committee's recommendation, clearly, but I don't want that to be a reflection that I disrespect, the thought and care and concern that went into it. The sort of the reputation of councillors, the reputation of this council is really important, and so it's it wasn't easy for me to read the recommendation of the audit committee, but in this instance I disagree with them. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Salt.
It's all been a messy business that has kept everyone involved in this for a year or so. I have come to the conclusion that the work that has been done so far is effectively what we would have if we did a formal investigation, apart from the fact that we have not been able to call people to interview. But if they were called to interview, we'd have no power to call them anyway, and we would probably end up just spending money on a investigation that would end up with exactly the same result. I think this is one of those cases where what may look in some people's minds morally wrong is not legally wrong, and that's the situation that we're in. So I accept that there's no point going further forward with this, because I don't think we would do anything other than spend our money in reaching the conclusion that nothing further could be done.
Anyone else want to make a comment? Go ahead, Chris Cornell. Thanks.
Yes, I think essentially I've come to the same conclusion as Mike. The issue here is, this case is obviously kind of challenge people's faith in democracy, and we as kind of exponents of that should be doing all that we can to kind of build it up. But it strikes me at this point the efficacy of an independent investigation is something I don't see the substantive value of. If we've been a victim in this circumstance, it strikes me we've referred the case to the police if the criminal, if there is any further criminal case to answer. We've looked at ourselves and essentially kind of checked our locks and said, what could we do again if this was to happen? And that was the purpose of the independent investigation through ECAP. And hopefully we are putting in place checks and balances that something like this wouldn't happen again. But I can't see how an independent investigation would be able to compel anyone to do anything. That would be the responsibility of the police. And so whilst it might sound lovely to hire a private investigator to deal with this issue, I'm not convinced that it would be a good spend of people's money. We have essentially resolved the problem internally. We've referred it to the investigating body, which would be the police if they had any further concerns. And I suggest that we try to move on from that in this particular way.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think I need to add anything else, but I do very much agree with what's been said. And I think actually I'm really quite pleased that the audit committee did remind us that we should go just that a little bit further and make sure that we did check everything again and hire that legal advice. And I think it was worthwhile. I think we've covered everything off that way as well. So yeah, I think I feel very much comfortable with the decision that we're making tonight personally. So. Okay, so so we can go straight to the vote if you're happy. So to vote for is to not proceed with any more investigation.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Baldock.
For.
Councillor Dawkins. Councillor Charlotte Cornell. Councillor Chris Cornell. Councillor Dixie. Councillor Hazelton.
For.
Councillor Nolan.
For.
Councillor Ricketts.
Abstain.
Sorry, I have to move my cursor. And Councillor Sole.
For.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you for that. Just pause.
Sorry, I was just moving my cursor around. I'll make the announcement, but that's 7-4 and 2 abstentions.
Thank you for that. That's great. Right, that's most of the excitement is over this evening now. So we're just through the last exciting few moments of the meeting. So we don't need to go into private session. So thank you for that, and thank you for sharing it with the public of what's there as well. We don't need to do item 16. There's no other urgent business. And I can advise you that the time is for the next meeting, time and date is the 10th of June at 7 p.m. in the same place we're here on now. And I can close the meeting at 20:30. Thank you very much.